Good afternoon. It is 1:30, March 29th, 2022, a time at which we said we would convene a special meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper. So I call that special meeting to order. Councillors, you have the proposed agenda for today's special meeting. It can be amended only by all of council being in agreement. Is there any additions or deletions or other changes to be made to the agenda for the special meeting? Councillor DeMola?
Well, there is on my mind, and whether the rest of the council is on side with me or not. I just would like to propose a change in the agenda item 3.1 from sidewalk seating to change the agenda item to read commercial use of public space. And I believe that was the overall intention, because we're not just talking about sidewalk seating here, because that's not all that's affected by our discussion today. So with council's approval, I would like to make that amendment to today's agenda. So changing sidewalk seating to read commercial use of public space. And I believe that in our meeting of March 22nd, when committee directed administration to apply for a discretionary use permit, the intent was a discussion on the overall ramifications and not just sidewalk seating. If I understood that correctly, then I guess we'll go in a few seconds. So that's my change.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor DeMola. Are there any other proposed changes to the agenda? If not, then with respect to what I will consider to be a motion from Councillor DeMola to change the wording of agenda item 3.1 from sidewalk seating as it appears to commercial use of public space. Any debate on that? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Would I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda subject to that one change in wording? Councillor Keller-Hempe, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. We have an agenda for today. This meeting, as a special meeting, is going to be conducted similar to a public hearing, although we do not have access as the Specialized Municipality of Jasper, Part 17 of the Municipal Government Act. So that is the planning and development section. So we don't actually hold public meetings or public hearings in the technical sense, but we will try and conduct ourselves as if we are conducting a public hearing. That means that we will hear submissions from the public. We have received, I believe, 7 written submissions. I will invite our CAO, Mr. Given, to reintroduce the topic formally with a presentation from administration, and he can speak to the submissions that we have received. We have people personally in attendance who have indicated a desire to speak. We have people online who have similarly indicated a desire to be heard by council. All of them will have that opportunity. We will limit submissions to 3 minutes each. That is subject to questions that councillors may have of each submitter, but the presentation itself by any interested party will be limited to 3 minutes. I had intended that I would read into the record the submissions that we have received in advance by email. On reflection, in order to save some time and give full opportunity to those in person and those on the Zoom platform, I will simply indicate that the submissions that we have heard, Mr. Gibbon will confirm the ones that we have. I too will confirm from whom we have received, and each of those submissions has been received and read by all of council and will form part of the public record. They will become included in the minutes of this special meeting and will be available online for any other member of the public to read, to see what we have heard. So with that, if there are no questions about process, just one reminder, we received, independently of our interest in commercial use of public space, an email today from a member of the public who indicated that while we continue to be on YouTube with a recording of our sessions, the quality of the sound seems to have diminished from when we were entirely on Zoom. And so I will encourage all councillors and members of the public when they present to ensure that the microphone is on so that it is more easily picked up and recorded so that the viewers have a better opportunity to hear our discussions. With that, Mr. Gibbon, you can turn on your microphone.
Sure, Your Worship. I'll try to make sure that I'm appropriately close so that it's being picked up well by people on the recording. Mayor Ireland Council, today administration is representing our request for decision on that had been titled sidewalk seating, but on the essentially on the commercial use of public space. Ms. Nadon will go through the administrative recommendation and the background of the report, but I just wanted to highlight, as His Worship pointed out, the specialized municipality doesn't have land use and planning authority, but this is a case where essentially administration is recommending to council what the rules should be, and it is up to council to hear from administration and members of the public and affected parties, and then make your own determination about what the rules should be. And the process that administration is recommending from there would be after council makes a determination of what the rules should be, that we would then take that forward to Parks Canada for a discretionary use permit. And so just to be clear, this is a process where council is taking the lead, and that lead obviously will, by virtue of this public hearing, involve the public and affected parties, but by our specialized status means that we also have to go to Parks Canada. So it is much like any other municipality where council will hear from those interested parties and stakeholders, and then get an opportunity to make a determination about what you want the rules to look like. In speaking to the interested parties and stakeholders, I will acknowledge, as His Worship pointed out, that we, administration and council, have received a number of items of correspondence in advance. We have received letters from Mountain Air, Harvest Food and Drink, Holiday Indian Restaurant, Jasper Rock and Jade, and the Raven Bistro, as well as Parks Canada. Those were all submitted electronically ahead of time and distributed to all members of council. And then here today at the meeting, we received a printed submission from Cassio's Italian Restaurant. And so I believe that that's also been, copies of that have also been presented to council. So Your Worship, that is the listing of all of the submissions that administration has received and council has received. Administration will ensure that all of those submissions in their full are attached to the minutes of this meeting, so they are part of the public record. And any interested party that wanted to see what the submissions said would have the ability to read that in the minutes verbatim. With that, Your Worship, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Nadon, who is going to introduce the RFD and the administrative recommendation. Administration will be here to answer any questions that you have about our recommendation. And then, Your Worship, I would suggest that after that, it would be over to council hearing from affected parties and stakeholders and members of the public. I'll hand it over to Ms. Nadon now.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbon. Ms. Nadon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everyone. As presented in the agenda, the sidewalk seating report, the recommendation from administration is that committee direct administration to apply for a discretionary use permit for sidewalk seating, including the parameters described in attachment 8. So to clarify the process, as Mr. Gibbon indicated, we are looking for input from council at this stage and a decision around those parameters, and council has the ability to determine what those should be. The ones that are presented attached to the report are working with the Parks Canada staff and the municipal team items that we think would be likely supported by Parks Canada are presented. And a bit of clarity that I wanted to add around the information that's in there is that multiple considerations are taken into account when administration makes recommendations, including operational requirements, public safety aspects, our jurisdictional framework where we work with Parks Canada and recognizing where the decision-making lies, and aesthetics around the community, and of course, community interests are where council will have different insights and inputs into this discussion. So for clarity of process for everyone involved, we thought we would clarify that our intention here is to apply to Parks Canada for a discretionary use permit, of which the conditions are yet to be determined by council. So as Mr. Given outlined, this is the opportunity for council to send administration to go do that, if that's the outcome. And then we would engage in the decision-making process that is Parks Canada's. I also wanted to highlight that the recommendations that are in here were developed together with Parks Canada. And certainly the proposal where pedestrian walkways are located in the parking lane from a public safety perspective is also supported from administration. So that is not only something that came from Parks Canada, but something that was reviewed and discussed internally and that administration also supported. Having that said, we understand there's lots at play on this file and council will hear a number of different perspectives, and therefore the direction or decision we're looking for would be finalizing those conditions to a satisfactory format and content for council is what we're trying to accomplish. That's it for me. Oh, I guess I have one more item, sorry. A noteworthy item, which also comes from feedback we've heard from the community, is that the proposal for 2022 is that whatever was approved in 2021 would substantially remain the same. So conditions 1 to 6 that are outlined in the attachment would apply to future patios, future developments, the long-term permanent setup. And that for 2022, the items that could be discussed or are on the table is around the color of the Jersey barriers, as well as the use of tents and umbrellas. So there is a bit of an immediate requirement for the business community to know what they can do for the summer of 2022. And the rest of that conversation could be applied to 2022, but is mostly looking forward at future years, understanding how close we are to patio season. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Given and Ms. Duggan. Before I open it to public presentations, are there any questions of administration with respect to the report? Councilor Miller.
Yeah, just before the public expresses what they'd like to see or talk about today, I have some questions about the conditions, and I don't know if it's more pertinent to discuss them now or afterwards. But just for clarification, I want to know if the directive, if there's any directive from Parks Canada directly to the municipality that installation shall only be located on the sidewalk at this point.
Go ahead, Mr. Given.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, for Councillor Demota. So Councillor Demota, as you'll see in the Parks Canada submission that came late last week, they're of the view in this letter that they would be open to either style of installation, either with the seating in the parking lane or with the seating on the sidewalk and a walk around in the parking lane. As Ms. Don referenced, I think the item in the attachment in the conditions that they should be, sorry, point number 2, I was looking to find the point, that the installation should only be located on the sidewalk. That was a MOJ municipal recommendation based on an assessment of both risk and safety, along with a number of other factors. This is obviously one of the areas where council can vary administration's recommendation if you so choose.
Number 4, do we have a directive, just for clarifications, that tents and signage, including logos, cannot be permitted?
So again, I'll reference the Parks submission. In that submission, they are pretty direct. They say tents are not permitted. And they continue and say tents are not conducive to the Jasper Mountain architecture. And so that's what we hear from Parks in their submission that again was received late last week. Administration's recommendation, and again, remembering that these are all about the forward looking beyond 2022. Administration attempted to, if I could say so, thread the needle between what we thought would be likely to be approved by parks. Again, if council decides that in response to community demand, you would like us to apply for something different, then that's fully within council's authority to direct us to do.
And that the use of tents and signage would come under development and out of a development request as far as abiding by the regulations that are in place for the community, as far as the motif for the Jasper Town site.
Your worship, for Councillor Demota, administration's recommendation here is on a couple of different fronts in terms of ease of use for the applicants, to ensure that we don't intrude into building permit territory. There are sections of building codes that would apply in Jasper as they do anywhere else in the province. And once you go over a certain size of quote unquote structure, then you start to intrude in that area. The listing here of conditions was intended to ensure that there is as little intrusion into federal jurisdiction as possible. And so the elimination of tents would ensure that no applicant ever had to seek a building permit.
That's good enough for now. And then number 5, Jersey barriers will not be permitted. Is that, for clarification for the community and people present here, is that something that's a directive straight from Parks Canada?
So again, your worship, for Councillor Demota, all of the recommendations or conditions proposed in attachment A are from administration, taking into account a number of different issues. And so the combination of having the seating on sidewalks in administration's view reduces the need for Jersey barriers. That, along with the perception from a number of people in the community that we have heard from, that Jersey barriers are unsightly or more commercial in nature, and Parks' view of the same, that they are more of a commercial, industrial sort of look, aesthetic, led administration to recommend that in future years beyond 2022, again, I'll just clarify that in future years after this summer, Jersey barriers should not be allowed. That was administration's recommendation.
Thank you very much. And I just want to clarify that it's not my intent to be disputative here. I just want to clarify because there's a lot of misinformation in the community, and I think that these points of clarification are important to emphasize and highlight. So I appreciate your time and sorry for the repetition.
Any other questions of administration at this point, Councillor Wilson?
There's a couple items that I'd like some clarification on. I guess, do we have a definition of a tent or a definition of an umbrella?
Your worship, for Councillor Wilson, no, administration hasn't provided a definition of a tent or an umbrella. I think we would be using the common definitions, a tent having 4 supports and a roof, and an umbrella having a single support and some sort of over-top covering.
I would challenge you there. Would not a tent have walls as well?
Well, your worship, for Councillor Wilson, as I said, administration hasn't provided a definition.
Right.
If council wanted to define that, you could, but again, administration hasn't provided a definition, so we're not actually making a case one way or the other.
Yeah, for sure. No, just because it seems as if item 7, exclusion of all tents, seems kind of directing at an item that may or may not have ever been erected in previous years.
Your worship, if I may actually maybe just speak to that. Mr. Don and I were having a discussion about point number 7 and punctuation. And so I want to be clear that in point number 7, it says, and you'll have to listen to my emphasis, and just to make sure that we're all under the same understanding, that for the 2022 season, so this summer, non-conforming installations that had previously been used in 2021 will be accepted, with the exclusion of all tents, umbrellas, and/or Jersey barriers displaying advertising logos in non-conforming colors. So the thing that is not allowed is a jersey barrier with non-conforming colors, or a jersey barrier with logos, or a tent with logos. So it is not that jersey barriers are excluded or that tents are excluded. It is that non-conforming colors and logos are excluded for 2022. So there's a bit of nuance there, and I can appreciate that. And even I think within administration, as we're looking at, we're trying to figure out how to make it more clear to council and the public. It's possible that we missed the mark there. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. So the intention is that for 2022, the majority of installations could continue exactly as they did last year, except if they had non-conforming colors on any of those items, they would have to be swapped out for colors that did conform. Or if they had logos on any of those items, those items would have to be swapped out for items that did not have logos on them. But again, the items themselves could remain, if that makes sense.
Additional question, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, and it's just to do with jersey barriers. Because it seems as if in future years, jersey barriers are not to be used. It does put the parking lane patios, if they were to be allowed, at greater risk by removing something that has already in previous years been allowed. And so just for clarification, the discontinued use of jersey barriers is because of some definition that it is it doesn't, I don't know what's that definition. Why is it being excluded in future years?
Your Worship, for Councillor Wilson, administration's view was that this would be more aesthetically pleasing, and when taken in combination with the seating being on the sidewalk, that the requirement for jersey barriers wasn't necessary. So it really is an aesthetics issue. And again, this is another area where if council felt that the aesthetics of the community, council is allowed to have a view of the aesthetics of the community and give us direction on what you would like the aesthetics to look like. This was administration's initial interpretation of what we were hearing in the community, and if council's hearing something different or hears something different from the presentations today, then you can give us that direction.
Any further questions of administration before I invite members of the public to present? Councillor Watson.
My only question is that in the letter from Parks Canada, it seems to say includes the grandfathering installations that were permitted from the 2021 season will be allowed in the 2022 season with the exclusion of tents. So it sounds like that Parks Canada has taken a firm stand on that. Am I correct?
So, Your Worship, I think for Councillor Waxer, I think there are a number of different views that council is going to hear. What administration is proposing is that Parks Canada is one of those views that council will have to take into account in making your decision about what rules you want to put forward. I think in the past, Parks Canada has been obviously under the legislation and our specialized municipality status, they have authority in this area. I think this is a new process of council taking a more active role in determining a community standard and then proposing that community standard to Parks. So I think it's fair to say that Parks has expressed a view in their written submission, and it's up to council to decide how much weight to give that submission when compared and contrasted with the other submissions that you have and will receive today.
Councillor Demota.
Well, I think that there's some ambiguity around what's considered a tent and an umbrella, and just for the rest of council, and just alluding to what Councillor Wilson was asking earlier, from what I've heard and what I understand, some members of business in the community have been told is that a 10 by 10 tent doesn't constitute a tent, but when you attach two 10 by 10 tents together, you get a 20 by 10 tent, and that is considered a tent itself. So separate, they're not, from my understanding, and I'd like to have some clarification on that down the road. I won't direct it right now, but maybe some people that are presenting today could help us out with some of that clarification, what they've been told, or they understand what the rulings are on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. I see your hand, Councillor Wilson. I will turn to you, but I just remind all council, at this stage, we are not yet into debate. We haven't heard from any members of the public yet. This is an opportunity to ask questions of administration. Then we will hear presentations. Then we will debate. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, understood. I would just like clarification on where the decision to, or the decision, the suggestion is that umbrellas can't have logos and the color and the color select the required color requirement.
Your worship, for Councillor Wilson, yeah, to be clear, this is administration's recommendation and assessment of what was most easily supported through the required parks process that would come following council's direction to us. So you're receiving advice to administration of what we believe would be relatively supportable, likely to be supported by Parks Canada in terms of the rules. Council can give us additional or different direction on what you'd like us to submit. So this is administration's sort of assessment of the situation on a number of different fronts. As you heard from Mr. Don, we considered public safety, we considered municipal operations, we considered the inputs of parks and the likelihood of something getting approved. We considered what we had heard over the 2021 and 2020 seasons from the public and from businesses. And we were attempting to bring all those together in something that we thought that would meet most desires. And you will note that I said most, because administration fully acknowledges that it does not meet everybody's desires. And I think the challenge is to find something that is aesthetically pleasing, safe, supports municipal operations, and is supportable by the entity that ends up having to ultimately make some kind of approval on this. And administration is presenting with recommendations that we think does a reasonable job of matching all those sometimes competing interests. But it's really up to council to judge which of those different areas you might like to give more or less weight to. So it is, administration is taking full responsibility for the conditions that are proposed here. That is our assessment and recommendation to you on what is likely to balance those competing interests. If the council thinks that we've missed the mark, this is your opportunity to tell us so, and we take that direction and we'll march forward with it.
Thank you all. If there are no further questions of council for administration, I will turn to public presentations or presentations from members of the public. We have individuals who have attended the quorum room here in person. It has been several years since we've been graced with members of the public here, so welcome to you all. We have additionally people on the Zoom platform. Not wishing to suggest that there is an advantage to either format. I am going to go by the weight of numbers and back and forth. So I'm going to begin calling names on the Zoom platform, as have been indicated to me, have been waiting in line since 1:30. I will deal with one Zoom presentation and then an in-person and back and forth until we get through all of the presentations. I will indicate that in the written submissions that council has received prior to the start of today's meeting, there is one from Harvest Food and Drink. Mr. Sean Walker is present in person today, indicated that he doesn't have a desire necessarily to repeat the submission that has already been provided to council, but would welcome any questions if councillors have those of Mr. Walker regarding his submission. So with that, if I can ask our members of administration to promote Stavro Korogonis to a participant, and we will then hear a presentation from him.
Hi, can you hear me?
Can hear you, but we can't yet see you.
Okay, there we are. Sorry, my first time joining this way. Hi, guys.
Where we can both see and hear you, and I will just remind you again that 3-minute maximum for your presentation, but then subject to more time if councilors have questions. So please go ahead, Mr. Corvallis.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor, and to all council members for attending this meeting and being here today. We do appreciate you guys hearing us out. I want to say I'm here as a member of the community and not just as the business community. I think that my particular business, it could be argued, benefits from a lot of patio space already, but I'm interested in the long-term health and promotion of my fellow business community members. So I'm here in support of them. I want the patio spaces to continue. Essentially, COVID isn't over. We're still dealing with sick and quarantined staff. There's people who work for me who have not returned fully to work because of safety issues. And by all accounts, the patio seating is a safe and enjoyable experience for both, our guests and our staff. I've been fortunate enough that throughout the pandemic, I've been able to travel a little bit, and I've seen places from Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, who have seemed to have a lot easier time than we do, or far less restrictions when it comes to the patio seating. And I've never seen the Jersey barriers like we have in Jasper, and that included in places like Toronto where traffic is much more of a concern. That said, I'd like to also, after hearing everything you guys talked about, the tents are a safe alternative to umbrellas. They are much safer in my experience than umbrellas. They're easier to secure. They're easier to manage. I've seen a lot of umbrellas blow off patios and hit people, hit cars. I've never seen that with a tent, and I know that's anecdotal, but they can be fastened and secured more easily. The facts are that the guests and the operators enjoyed the experience. The business community in Jasper enjoys it. And this is something worthwhile for a council to pursue for the last 2 seasons. So I think that this is very worthwhile. And this is something worth, I don't know if it's the right term, but pushing back on parks a little bit. I believe that we have a council here that have been elected by the people who represent our interests. And that gives us a democratic option to change or keep those people. And in Parks Canada is not that organization. I don't think those people are elected or have, how they got their title, but it wasn't through a democratic process. And I believe that maybe this is for another discussion. This council is more than capable of defining and operating or taking charge on this issue. And these 2 layers of bureaucratic process is, in my opinion, just government overreach, textbook case of that, especially when an organization like Parks Canada is determining or interpreting at their own, in their own fashion, what is aesthetically pleasing. I see, I don't know.
Mr. Corvallis, time, you've exceeded your 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay. Questions of council for Mr. Corvallis? I see he's disappeared. If you might be able to bring him back. Thank you. Just determining, Mr. Corvallis, whether there are questions of you from council regarding your presentation. Councillor Keller-Harrington.
I'm curious, Mr. Corvallis, thank you for your presentation, on how you secure the tents, compared to the umbrellas.
To secure, though, the tents are specifically designed to have, I'm not sure what the correct term is, but like buckles that can be fastened to either the Jersey barrier or weights on the ground. And they're designed for events that are held on like soccer fields and things like that. So they're specifically designed not to catch too much wind. But yeah, to secure them, you can use anything from rope, chains, anything that has like load bearing properties and even like ratchet straps, and they can be secured quite easily. Whereas an umbrella, and I've been in the business for a long time, it's virtually impossible to definitively secure an umbrella. If a strong enough wind comes, that thing will lift and fly away.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Corvallis? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We will move to the next presentation, and that will be in person. Mr. Cassio is here. And as you make your way up to the microphone, Mr. Cassio, I will say, and I allowed Mr. Corvallis to go on by about 20 seconds because I failed to give him a 30-second warning. So from here on, the 30-second warning will be given to both in-person and online presenters, so we can try and keep to the 3-minute limit. And I will say, before you begin, Mr. Cassio, so this is on my time, not yours. We did receive your written submission. It was provided to us just at the opening of our meeting today. It will form part of the public record, but I think I am safe to say that not all councillors, and certainly myself included in that, have had an opportunity to read your letter, but we do have it and it will form part of the record. And so if you wish to read it in, that's fine, but if you wish to make a different presentation, that's fine as well. Your letter is here and is part of the record. So with that, welcome, Mr. Cassio. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'll go through what I've written. I followed the guidelines of what Parks Canada has asked for, and my comments are mine, and they're made without prejudice. Installation only permitted between May 15th and October 20th. Operators should have the opportunity to install earlier and stay later depending on the weather. Installation zone located on the sidewalk. Personally, I believe food and beverage staff should not be walking through customers, but there are situations in the community due to the physical layout of individuals' properties that it's impossible. And they have to put the walkway between the building and the sidewalk. Railings and planter boxes, mine are constructed of iron, and they're going to continue to be constructed of iron. I would like to add the planter boxes used by the municipality are made of stone, and they would be well suited for any of us to use instead of Jersey barriers, provided they're provided at 3 o'clock. And I'd like to add on the side of Parks Canada is using railings and everything that they're constructing. The new houses on Patricia Street all have iron railings front and back. Tents and signage will not be permitted with the logos. Use of tents may or may not be a good thing. We prefer not to use it, but as you mentioned from the last presenter, we've lost a number of umbrellas down the street. The wind tunnel that's created along Connaught is unbelievable at times, and we're chasing umbrellas all the time. What may be a good idea, though, is a gazebo type structure built within the parameters of the patio. Wooden structure, retractable roof, good for customers when we're having dinner. And we live in the mountains. It's not that nice at night, some nights. You know, I don't know where Parks is coming from and who's making those decisions, but it's time to get real and get into the 20th century.
30 seconds, Mr. Cassio.
Jersey barriers not permitted. I agree with it. My landlord installed his 2 weeks after I put the Jersey barriers in, and got a very nice iron railing. My cost was $3,400 for the barrier. Now I got to spend another $3,800 for the barrier. Point that I want to bring up is fees. The proposed fees whether they're for 21 or 22 or 23 are unacceptable. Paper will show that we have 4 types of operators in the community. Our profit margins are different. You're going to put some businesses out of the patio business completely because they just can't afford it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Casio. That is time, but as I said, we do have your written submission.
Thank you.
To accommodate that. Before you leave the chair and the microphone, are there questions from councillors to Mr. Casio? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm paralleling my personal notes with the conditions, and it's interesting that the dates came up, and I think I'd like to ask, how long does it take to put up your particular installation at Casio's? Because it seems to me that the 15th of May is going right into the long weekend. Depending on how quickly you can get contractors, you may miss the long weekend if you can't put installations in earlier. My question would be, how long does it take the installation? 3 days? Okay, and I guess with administration, if I may, why the dates of the 15th and the 20th of October, May 15th, were they chosen, given the lead time going into the long weekend? I'm hoping that there's some flexibility in that particular point to be able to allow restaurants to be properly prepared.
Your Worship, for Councillor Melnick, first off, absolutely, there's flexibility. We'll take whatever direction council gives us. But also there is, additionally, administration was considering whether these would start to appear, for all intents and purposes, to be more permanent, regular use, or if this is a special use of this public space. And so once we start to get over, some period of time, it's going to start to look as though this is the regular use of, regular commercial use of public space rather than a temporary use of public space, which could bring in some complications vis-a-vis the municipality's commercial cap. So again, out of an abundance of caution, administration recommends that we should be aware of that. And there is a municipal operational imperative here. We need to be able to do spring street sweeping and cleanup of the gravel and all the other sort of maintenance things that go along with spring. And in the fall, we want to ensure that these installations aren't in the way of our operations teams as we may get an early snowfall and may need be required to do snow work. So there, again, another example where there are a couple of different considerations that administration was trying to thread the needle on. And it is a recommendation to council, and council can decide otherwise.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Are there other questions for Mr. Casio from members of council?
Can I give input on that last question?
A question about
There's
times?
comment.
Well, if
Administration.
no, this is not a debate between you and administration. If Councillor Melnick wants to pose a question to you, I would permit that. In the meantime, I have a question for you. You did not get to it in your oral presentation, but I note in your letter to council, you have addressed patio umbrellas and the prohibition against logos and the requirement for neutral colors. My question to you, Mr. Casio, is what investment do you have now in patio umbrellas? And would you be in a position, given supply chain issues that are known, to replace your umbrellas prior to, well, let's say May 15th, although that may be open to debate?
Right now, we have $31,000 invested in our patio, including the umbrellas, the heaters, the walkway, the railings, the wind protectors. An additional $5,000 was spent on the plastic barriers, the plastic barriers because of COVID that we have to separate the table from. umbrellas are part of that. For me to go and buy umbrellas today, we're looking, and for the type that we use, we're looking at another $500 to $700. Enough money's been spent.
And sort of carry on, the umbrellas that you currently have, do you consider that those would be offside either the color or the logo requirement, if that was to be made effective?
Mine conform, they're black. But I advertise what we sell. Food, liquor, beer, and wine, that's what we sell. We can't advertise on our own premise. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And one thing that I have in my report, my presentation is, who the heck is making the decision? Is this legislation? Is this part of the act, the Parks Act? Or is it a committee or the two individuals that are looking out the windows every day, watching what we do, making these decisions for Parks Canada?
Thank you for that, Mr. Cassio. Just before you leave, are there any further questions for Mr. Cassio from councilors? Councilor Wilson?
I'm not sure what it's called, but on the sidewalk, many businesses have sandwich boards, right? That's what it is.
I'm sorry.
Sandwich boards, you know, that's a sign, you know, there's advertisements on there. Are there any requirements that you know of that suggest that you can't have a sign on you know, a logo or anything like that on your sandwich board?
I have signs on my patio itself. I think they referred to signage on the Jersey barriers that some operators were putting advertising on.
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking is I'm challenged to see the depth or the division there. So there is some suggestion here that you can't have signs on your umbrellas, yet you can have a sign on your sandwich board. So I just kind of trying to work through in my head, like why can't you have a sign on your?
But it in this framework, we're installing a patio that now becomes part of our facility. We have advertising on our windows. And why can't I have it on my patio? It's now become part of my facility. I'm paying for that privilege.
Thank you, Councilor Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Cassio, again. There are no further questions.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I believe, though, that this input and meeting should have been called way before any decisions were made. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, decisions have not yet been made. That's why we are here. Our next presenter, we'll go back to the Zoom platform, and I could ask administration to promote Brett Ireland. Good afternoon, Mr. Ireland, and so I will remind you 3 minutes, and I will give you a warning when you have 30 seconds left. I have no written submission from you, so go ahead and open your presentation.
Thanks. I just want to start off with saying thank you, and just want to recognize the gratitude we have for council and administration and parks for having made this opportunity become a reality through COVID. It was incredibly beneficial to our team and our business, and we heard a lot of great feedback from our guests. So big thank you for actually making this happen so quickly in the midst of all the challenges with COVID. From our perspective, I think the biggest thing that we see here is this is an opportunity for our business, of course, but it's a huge opportunity for the destination and for the community. And in that line of thinking, our view is that one of the most important pieces is with respect to the draft that we've seen in terms of some of the requirements going forward after this year, say, is to be less prescriptive and provide an opportunity for as many businesses in town, both retailers and restaurants, to participate. And with respect to the idea of only allowing the pedestrian walkway to be on the street side, I think really excludes a lot of businesses that might otherwise want to participate in this. We're fortunate we could probably make it work either way, but I really think that's just unnecessary and unfair to exclude a lot of businesses with that respect. A little bit further to that as well, I did speak with one retailer. I don't know if they're present in person or not. I can't see who's there, but I do understand there's maybe some overly restrictive rules with what retailers can do. So I think that's something that council should really address to make sure that it's again as inclusive as possible. So I think having retailers participate in this in the long term would be great. It's been mentioned by a few of the other presenters about the umbrellas and the tents, and our view is, I mean, it's again, I think the lack of prescriptiveness around whether they can be on the street side or the patio would be our paramount concern, or sorry, on the sidewalk. But I think the tents, there is an opportunity to explore that further. We explored it a little bit in terms of the building code and looking at some opportunities through an engineer. So I think how that gets explored exactly, I don't know, but I think there should be some more consideration because I think there's a safe way to do that. And as David mentioned, I think in a lot of instances, they can be safer than umbrellas. Last two things I just want to touch on is in terms of timelines. This is challenging in terms of when we're about to go, opening into the patio season. So that needs a lot of consideration with the investment. And also further to Councillor Melnick's comments, we all want to use as many local contractors as possible for building and setup and takedown. And so the tighter that timeline is relative to opening, I think makes it even more difficult to potentially be able to use local contractors. Lastly, with respect to fees, again, we're all coming to COVID and it's super challenging, but I do think in the long term, it's incredibly important that we take in consideration all the stakeholders, and I think it has to be fair.
30 seconds.
Understood. That what we pay as businesses reflects the opportunity. And so I think in the long term, that has to be something that feels right in the eyes of all the stakeholders, particularly the municipality and the locals. So those are my comments. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Ireland. You had an additional 10 seconds. Questions from councillors for Mr. Ireland? There appear to be none, so thank you for that presentation.
Thanks for listening.
I will go back to in person and Mr. Schlüssel-Corvallis.
Mayor and councilors for hearing us today. I will forego the formalities because
I just want to say that I want to second everything that Brett has said, so I can abbreviate my statement today. It's very concise, and I agree with a lot of the sentiment. To me, the only thing that really needs to be focused on is some clarity as to what will change this year and what will not change this year. If we're going forward, as is my impression now, then all is good and well, and we have lots of time to discuss this going further, which I think is paramount. We need to focus on what's working and what's not working and how to make this more inclusive for all businesses, regardless of their stature. And then for those that cannot take this privilege and use this, then we have to make it equitable for them, whether it's fees or costs to the businesses that use it. In that vein, though, this has to be usable and functional in any way, shape, or form, whether it's this year or going forward. And in that regard, I think coverings and protection from the weather is of utmost importance, and I don't think it's been stood on enough. We live in an inclement weather environment. We live in the mountains. These have obviously shown lots of progress and benefit to the town and to the visitors. But when it rains or when it's 35 above, we have a problem because we've invested in these spaces. We have done all this hard work, and then they become unusable or inoperable. And businesses have high investment in staff and in scheduling. We also have high investment in the infrastructure for them. That needs to be accounted for. And if we're going to pay fees, adequate fees, yes, we need to be able to use these for a minimum guaranteed amount of time, and they have to be usable for the visitors and the staff alike. So that's all I have really to say. Everything else I think has been covered, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Corvallis. Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corvallis. I have a question for you. Do you keep note or track of how many days you wouldn't be able to operate if you didn't have your patio?
I'm sure we have. I'm sure we have those records. I don't have them with me today, but obviously in the first summer we had a fantastic summer, and there were very few days. But last year we had a lot of inclement weather, and it was very costly. I had to send staff home, had to pay them their minimum hourly rates, and then there was obviously just disorganization and no seating for our customers that came by. Obviously, with the campground coming around and being full capacity, these seats have been proven very valuable to the whole community in giving people more places to sit. And I remember before patios were even allowed, there was lineups everywhere for people to sit in inclement weather because the campgrounds are the first ones that come to ask us for a usable space. That doesn't even account for when you have that space used, where you put those people when the weather surprises you without any notice.
Thank you, Councillor Demore.
Thank you. It's nice to see you in person here, and I don't know how many opportunities we've had to engage publicly in this format. So first of all, I want to thank you for pushing the envelope a couple of years ago to get some of the standards that have been followed in the community. And I was one of the people that thought that we should have a motif of some sort going forward, because I wasn't sure how things were going to unroll. But Mr. Corobonas here started out on a good note and set the tone for the rest of the town. And I believe that we presented an overall product that competes internationally. And I'm not going to say that I'm the best travel person in the world, but I have gone around and I see what other people are doing in other communities, not just in Canada, Alberta, but overseas. So having said that, and I know that you're well traveled too, what are your feelings about some of the proposed conditions on the permit?
Well, I mean, it's a very general question, but to make it short and to the point, I think I have a vested interest, like all of us, in the aesthetics of our town as much as, even Parks Canada. We all want it to look good, and I don't think that against anything that's reasonable. Again, we're pressed for time and finances at this juncture because of this pandemic, and we've made significant investments, as Mr. Cascio has said, in the patios we already have. Now, we just have to be prudent as to what we do going forward. And the next couple of years, I think, are crucial in getting over this hump. And at that point, once we have a definition of what we want as a community, I think that businesses like mine and others will gladly invest in permanent structures. But again, they have to be functional. And so I don't have a say one way or another. I think we built the best we could with what we had in the timelines and the materials we had. And, I'm proud of a lot of the businesses and what they did. Do I think they're perfect? No. Can they always be better? Yes. Should we strive for that? Yes. And we ask council and the Parks Administration to give us the time and the adequate resources to make those determinations and then build something we can be proud of long-term that is A, functional, and B, equitable for everyone.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, my question is, it's to do with I guess the experience that you offer, your dining establishment offers, as it kind of stands out from others. And I guess my question is, do you think your customers receive a better dining experience by using canopies, tents, etc., whatever you want to define that as, like your setup, that protects your customers from inclement weather than, say, a patio table without the same type of protection?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had both, right? We had some patio protection with some tents, and we did our due diligence. We even were confronted by Parks Canada's concerns about safety. We made an investment to have a local engineer assess them, safety them. We made sure that they were secured properly, and our customers gave us a lot of feedback. Actually, our patio was one of the busiest in town, as everybody knows, and those patio coverings are crucial. And when there was inclement weather or even just heat, part of our patio would not be usable, and some patios in town would be empty while we were full. So I can't overstate the need for some sort of covering. And again, it's arbitrary to some degree and subjective as to what we want. But in order for those patios to be useful, even in the immediacy, that has to be considered. And I don't think that we nearly have an adequate option for that. And I do feel like I did a lot of progressive things to try and convince Parks Canada and show the community what is possible in a short notice. But right now, I just want to know that we can continue in this vein until we have a better solution. Those investments have been made, and they're functional and they're safe.
Thank you for that. Councilor Moore.
Thank you. I often see some hesitancy in the mayor's eyes when he's referring to me. There's a pause. I know I can be painful at times in my requests. Mr. Corrigan, on the discussion that you just had with Councillor Wilson's question, do you have a direct understanding, a clear understanding what you've been told constitutes as a tent or parameters around that, dimensions?
I don't. I mean, other than back and forth discussions with Parks Canada as to what is legal and applicable during in regards to their land use rules and the provincial and federal jurisdictions. But again, I think that every case deserves some sort of individual assessment, and we did our best to get professional assessments about safety. Obviously, safety is a priority for all of us. I have and been required by the municipality and others to have insurance for these patios. Safety of my customers and guests is a priority in the food and beverage business, maybe the prime directive. So obviously we want this to work out for everybody, and I don't have a full assessment of what the options could be or should be, but I am here to tell you that there needs to be clear defined options going forward and in the immediacy to make this work this summer and beyond.
Thank you for that. If I might just interject, I see your hand, Councillor Wilson. But arising from your response, you indicated that you have to have insurance as a business, and that, I take it, then covers patio operations. Have you been advised by your insurance agent or broker or insurer itself anything about the necessity of Jersey barriers?
I have not been given any directive by my insurer or my insurance agent in regards to street protection of any sorts, whether it be vehicular or elemental. So they don't care what we're using. They haven't asked me for an assessment or any kind of qualification for that. And I, as far as I know, I'm complying with all of their jurisdictional and insurance sort of liabilities.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, I saw your hand, but did I see yours as well, Councillor Foxer? I did not. Councillor Wilson.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my head around the number 2 condition, and I'd like to just use you as an example, because I can't really get behind the one condition suggesting that patios should all be located on the street, on the sidewalk. I think we need to have options for different types of businesses and their location in our community. And so my question would be that if we accepted that installations shall only be located on sidewalks with pedestrian sidewalk extending into the parking lane, would you even be able to operate in this manner?
No, absolutely not. And I mean, this was a defining moment in these patios 2 years ago when we had this problem, is that there was no application for businesses outside those parameters. We had presented to council and to the administration, especially, that we had found solutions and we had conferred with our business partners and surrounding businesses. And I think the last 2 years has proven what can be possible if somebody has an objective and open approach to these regulations. So whichever ones you guys have going forward, I would suggest it's really important that we include some sort of mechanism so that people can find solutions for their districts or applicable spaces. And every space is different. So I think that we are the prime example of how effective it can be if we allow businesses to be innovative and the council and the administration especially to work together and find open approaches to different problems. That's it. Without that option, we will not have a patio. And then I think that I have letters here today, and we have lots of opinions from the surrounding businesses that our patio has been overtly beneficial to all the business without impacting negatively one of them. And that speaks volumes to, you know, how problems can be overcome with a little bit of common sense.
And if I may just follow up, yeah, sorry, you just spoke to some letters that were from businesses that aren't food and beverage, but they are around the vicinity of your patio. And if we were to suggest that patios may only be on sidewalks, this would then impede visitors from seeing the storefront of other businesses. Am I right in this location?
Yeah, that is their main concern.
Yeah.
And they pay a premium for those frontages, and they deserve to have those useful. And again, we found, I think, a really useful solution that has almost no downside other than that we're taking up the parking lane. And then if the parking lanes are going to be used for walkways in any circumstance, I feel like it's neither here nor there. We've just got to find a safe way to use them. Thank you.
Thank you all. If there are no other questions for Mr. Corvallis, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
I will return now to the Zoom platform, and for those out there waiting, Candace Broughton will be or has already been promoted next, and following that we have exhausted the in-person presentation. So Mr. Leach, if you are still out there, you will follow, and then we will turn to Mrs. Pavlov. But now we have before us Candace Broughton, so go ahead. We will hear your presentation now. Thank you.
I'll really read it out because a 3 minute scares me. Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having this venue today for us to speak. I'd like to talk to you today regarding street parking in front of our shop downtown Patricia Street. Basically, I guess it would be commercial use of a public space. I will start by briefly explaining how our operation works so you can understand fully what we need. Prior to the start of all of our tours, our shuttle van will pick up our guests at their hotel and they bring them downtown to Patricia Street to our store. This prevents them from driving their own cars and taking up valuable parking space downtown on Patricia Street. We run 40 to 80 packs a day. They are left in the downtown area for 45 minutes up to 2 hours. This gives them time to spend money downtown on lunch, coffee, liquor, pharmaceuticals, ice cream, groceries, marijuana, what have you. So to explain to you why we need to secure a space, our motorcycles are parked on Patricia Street for approximately a half an hour in between trips. This is the time it takes to unload a group, get them inside, undress them, dress the next group, and go back outside and load up, and off we go again. Where the problem lies is when we return from a tour and we cannot find anywhere close to the shop or in the vicinity to park. We can't use the alley. It's blocked a lot of times with delivery trucks on both ends. We all know the condition of the alley is horrific. There's potholes. Our bikes bottom out if we try to ride back there loaded. The 15-minute unload zone in front of Tim Hortons, that is what we use in a pinch just to get the people off the bike, send them across the street to the shop. Again, this is kind of unsafe because our drivers then need to take the bike, but they need to take it somewhere and there's nowhere to take it. We run 4 to 6 motorcycles at a time. So we'd need a space similar to the restaurants. 1 to 2 spaces is probably what we'll be looking at. With this, I would only probably need this space about 5 or 6 o'clock p.m. Basically it's during the day so we could come and go with our tours. In the busy bus season, it's pretty busy. After 6, it could be open to public parking. I believe we have a significant and positive impact to our businesses downtown. Therefore, we should be allowed a space similar to the patio seating that restaurants are allowed. Motorcycles can't park on the sidewalk. This would have to be something that would have to be just in the street parking in front of us. COVID's been tough. We should all have equal opportunity to survive, maybe with some solutions here. I guess coming up with suggestions, I guess I I don't need barriers. I don't need motif. I don't know what would be all right. Other than painting the street in front of the space that I need to secure for the day. The only sign that would be required is maybe just a sign saying public parking available after 5. Maybe some side barriers on each side of where we need to park during the day. Something like that. I'm open to suggestions.
30 seconds.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. It's just we need somewhere to come and go from in the daytime. And also last year was hard. We couldn't park a bike on the street because we were worried about parking tickets. So we didn't put a bike out. So then there was no advertising, no nothing showing we were there. When the bikes don't come and go all day long, nobody knows we're there. So we didn't have the opportunity for walk-in traffic. Moving forward, it is going to be a little bit busier, and I think towards the end of the summer, and then tour buses will be in full swing and we'll be running pretty hard. So we do want the opportunity to continue to operate. I've got all my retired guys ready to go. Everybody wants to work, so we'd like to move forward with your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Broughton. I regret that a 3-minute limit was stressful, but just like patios, we have to have some rules around process, or we would be here interminably. So that was the rule, but we're happy to have heard your submission. Questions from councillors? Councillor Wilson?
Well, I appreciate your presentation today because I was kind of wondering why Councillor Demota was concerned about the change of the definition that we were here to talk about today. Rather sidewalk seating, it's a commercial use of public space, and I appreciate that. I guess my only question is your months of operation. Do they fall within the May 15th to October 20th parameters?
Pretty much, we do open for operation starting April 15th, but it's not quite as busy at that time, so we can operate around that. But starting May 15th, that's when it's busy enough to do so. So I don't know at what point we could secure this space. I don't know, like if the sidewalk was painted, it might be there year round, which means signage would have to be clear that parking is available outside of these dates and in the evenings.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Demota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Broughton, for your presentation today. Really appreciate the information that has been brought forward from you and your business. What I have an understanding from what you said that you're more than willing to work with the municipality or operations, whoever it may be, to make some type of accommodation if you wanted to theoretically rent those 2 spaces, much like restaurant patios would. Do you have any objection for paying for the space?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's got to be fair.
I think that's,
yeah.
I think that's all. That's fair. Thank you.
Councillor Milne?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question would be around logistics as you have tours coming and going. The drop off of customers that are going to be going on the next tour could be accommodated within that same space that you would have the motorcycles in from a previous tour, or would that require additional space?
Nope. So how it works is that basically there's a group sitting, being unloaded while our shuttle van is gone to get the next group. So by the time the shuttle van returns with the group that's going after that, this group is unloaded and out of the way. Our drivers assist with the dressing and undressing. So they're in the shop, they dress the next arriving group, and they go back out to the street and use the bikes where they sit, and off they go for their hour tour or 2 hours or whatever they do. So yeah. So the 15-minute stuff kind of was a problem with the paid parking. That just wasn't quite long enough. Bylaw was more than fair with us last summer on that issue. It's tough to be stressed about where we're going to be, because there's been times where we had to turn the flashers on and just get people with handicapped issues. We have people with canes and can't walk. They got to be near the shop. So we were unloading them in spots that wasn't a clearly marked parking space. This is probably not okay insurance wise, stuff like that. They kind of need to be in a secure parking spot to unload them on and off the bikes, and safety is key for us.
Thank you, Councillor Kelleher-Henty.
Thanks, Ms. Biden. And how many bikes total do you have?
Total 6 with sidecars. We have the rental is another bike that's not got a sidecar. I wouldn't have to have them out there all day long. I need, when I'm running 4 or 5 bikes, I come back an hour later and I got no parking and we got nowhere to go. We got to get these people off. I only have a half an hour to get them off before the next group comes. We've set the schedule up for that gap due to the fact we keep people in town to do their shopping. It's set up on a rotating basis, so that supports all of the businesses around us. We're a little loud. I've always been open to, if there's any issues, give us a call. But I also want to send people to all the restaurants, to the bottle shops, to get what they want before I shuttle them back out to Jasper Park Lodge or down the street. Lots stay in town and stay there, and we point out various locations for them to go to get what they desire.
So if I understand this right, then when all 6 bikes are out, your shop box goes in, takes out the next group, brings back the next group, and then
Yeah, when the group comes back, the van's off picking up another group of 10. So hopefully when they get back, these bikes are all unloaded, ready to go to load the next group and go. So that's just kind of that time frame.
Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Well, I don't know if I really have a question or a comment. You know what, just looking at everything in your operation, it seems like you're doing your best to work with businesses around you and promote activity, commercial activity in the town site. And your bikes, your motorbikes, are your way of attracting people to your business. Essentially, the bikes are your retail space outside. Right, so so I'm trying to wrap my head around, you know, the argument of, you know, having spaces available for restaurants on sidewalks, and you obviously can't operate on the sidewalk. And I think, you know, this provides a really good argument for expanding thought around what we need to do in the community to make it more equitable for businesses.
I really appreciated Brett Ireland's comment regarding this needs to be inclusive of everything. I find when I went to fill out the form last year, it's very restaurant based. I couldn't answer some of the questions, so I don't know if it was clear what I needed, and that, I don't know, like, so that's where kind of making it work for everybody that wants a little bit of space to continue operating is really important.
Thank you. I see no more hands, so I thank you for your presentation, Ms. Rod.
Thank you.
We will continue. We will go to the penultimate participant on the Zoom platform. If you could elevate Mr. Leach as a participant, please. Ms. Nadone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Participants have to accept the invitation to be promoted, and if they're not immediately by their computer, that might be a challenge, but I'm just filling airtime. I was going to suggest we could move to the next presenter and come back to Mr. Leach, but it appears he's trying.
Yeah, at least have audio.
He's there. He just needs to unmute.
Good afternoon, Mayor Ireland. I guess I am the step in as Mr. Leach sorts out the technology.
All right,
Going,
Can I just pause you for a moment, just to
Certainly.
clarify then, Mr. Leach is there now, so. Ms. Pavlov, if you could defer for a moment, we finally have Mr. Leach, and it might be a connectivity issue as well, so if we have him, perhaps we should hear from him. Mr. Leach, you are there, I'm going to hope that we are audible to you, but could you say something to see whether you are audible to us? IT to the rescue. Well, maybe not. All right, if we might then let us return to Mrs. Pavlov, and we will hope that Mr. Leach is able to connect with us soon.
good afternoon, Mayor Ireland and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I will begin by saying that much of what I had scripted, so to speak, has been said by many of the operators in our community that we represent as the Chamber of Commerce. I will note that we are absolutely thrilled to hear that attachment A is still very much a work in progress. There was concern following the approval of the 2022 season to carry on as it has for the past 2 years, and then to see the attachment A that definitely changed the perspective from the Chamber's view as well as our membership. So I will just very quickly then say that everything that has been said is absolutely in step with what the Chamber feels. Everything from supply chains to the tents, to the fees, all of those things, the walk around versus walk through, all of those issues are very much still in limbo as far as the operators are concerned. And our hope is that, Mayor and Council, you will consider that immediately following the beginning of the season, so allowing operators to set up their operations, that we can begin a very, pardon me, robust conversation dealing with exactly these details. Our hope as a chamber is that we could completely make this a done deal, so to speak, by the end of this season, making it very crystal clear and ability and provide rather the operators with the ability to prepare adequately for the 2023 and going into 2024 and 2025 seasons. As has been noted, May 15th is a date that is currently on the books. We as a chamber would like to ask that council consider May 1st ultimately as an opportunity for the operations to establish themselves properly and safely and meeting the standards that are currently in place by law enforcement. And so May 1st would be ideal. I don't know that that is in the stars, but that would be what we want to do. And of course, the chamber is always wanting to collaborate with the municipality and all of the other partner organizations to make this as successful for all operators. And again, thank you very much. And I have said everything that I can say that people haven't said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pavlov. You win the prize so far. We've yet to hear from Mr. Leach, but you were 0.3 seconds within 3 minutes. Questions from councillors? Councillor Wilson?
Hello, Mr. Pavlov. Okay, so you were just about, you started with a couple items that the chamber would support. And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind getting your opinion crystal clear. So my question would be that for the number one condition, you would support it, but would prefer that we apply for a May 1st start rather than the May 15th. The second one is installations shall only be located on sidewalks with pedestrian sidewalk extension located in the parking lane. You would suggest that you do not support that, strike that.
I would support a very robust conversation on being able to accommodate the various operators in their geography, physical location.
Okay, so you would suggest, you would support having the opportunity to either be in the parking lane or on the street. And the only reason I'm running through this because you represent, a group of businesses, and I just wanted to get, that opinion. Sidewalk extensions into the street. Well, this one, if the sidewalk were to be into the street, would you support the suggestion of railings made of wood? I think there was a suggestion earlier that one business already has metal railings. So I think you would probably support the options, yes to code, maximum height of railing, et cetera, but by defining one type of material, do you think that's a bit too restrictive?
That is correct.
Okay. Tents and signage, including logos, will not be permitted. I would assume that the chamber does not support this one.
That is correct. We do support the usage of tents. Signage to us is part of being a business. It's part of branding. It's part of making your business what it is. And so in the case where tents and signage would be restricted, would certainly not be the preferred method by any means. But again, we want this to be part of the very robust discussion that we would like to start immediately.
Okay, and number 5, Jersey barriers. I would assume that you would support the use of Jersey barriers if the business's situation required.
Yes.
Patio umbrellas with logos are permitted on site, but must be neutral colors. Do you see a challenge on this one at this point in time as we're running up to?
Absolutely, 100%. For this season, I don't see it be feasible in any way. Supply chains being one issue, and also the investment has previously been made. I would suggest, again, part of the conversation for going forward would include those types of things. Okay,
and any comments on item 7, suggesting that for the 2022 season, non-conforming installations that had previously been used will be accepted with the exclusion of tents, umbrellas, Jersey barriers displaying advertising, logos.
I would say, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I would say I would go with, for the 2022 season, non-conforming installations that had previously been used in 2021 will be accepted, full stop. And the rest would be subject to the robust discussion we wish to have.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mrs. Pavlov, can you help me understand your definition of robust discussion? Because, I can make my notes here and say that we need to have a discussion. But what I guess I want to hear is, what is the expectation of the discussion? Like, what are the expectations of the chamber in those discussions?
The expectations, Councillor Melnick, would be to have an opportunity to form a task force, if you wish to call it that, or a standing committee that would be involved with discussing all of those elements that remain very unclear to many businesses. It would obviously include the municipality, Parks Canada, some of the business operators, some of whom rather you heard from today. And certainly individuals who are not just in the food and beverage end of this discussion. It would include people like Ms. Broughton, who is definitely affected by how this will work. It's got everything to do with fees. It's got everything to do with the physical. So it would encompass likely bylaw as well, and any other interested parties that are operating. I will give one very quick footnote, if I may. On 3 occasions now, the Chamber has contacted over 130 businesses each time. And it was regardless of sector. It was everything from nonprofits to operators like massage therapists, like offices, H&R Block, to name just a few. Nonprofits, including places like the Masonic Lodge, located in Mr. Soto Corriganis area. And this has been overwhelmingly approved by all of the people that we spoke to. And that has only increased over the duration of the 3 times we went through this process. And yes, suggestions have been made, and they include all of those topics that I've been ranting about for the past few minutes. So it would give an opportunity for everyone then to contribute once again. The Chamber is happy to facilitate that happening.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly-Rempe.
Thank you, Mrs. Pavlov. When you did your research, Mrs. Pavlov, were you also contacting members that were not in the chamber? Or were they
I'm sorry?
all when you contacted the businesses, were they all chamber members, or did you contact some businesses that were outside the chamber as well?
It was every single business located between the 400 and 600 blocks of Patricia and Connaught, regardless of sector, regardless of membership.
Great, thank you for that, Mrs. Pavlov.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mrs. Pavlov of members of council? I see none, so thank you, Mrs. Pavlov. Appreciate your submission on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. And I will ask staff now to try again to promote Mr. Leach to become a participant.
Can you guys see me?
No, but we can hear you.
Our video. Oh, there we are.
Now we see and hear you. Welcome, Mr. Leach. Go ahead.
Thank you for having me on, council. And I take it I'm the last one. What I'd like to say is I don't have a patio per se. Thanks to my landlord, he took out the old escalator after me pleading with him for 6.5 years. I've been in my site for 8 years, 18 years in the business and making sandwiches. And the patios don't particularly affect me, except the one that was out front was underutilized. And I don't want to zero in on that one, but being Candace Broughton's next door neighbor in our little mall, it was underutilized. And I think that everything that has been done by all of the small businesses, I think is valiant. I think all of the work to blanket everybody with the same logos, I think the branding is extremely helpful in a very trying time. To have signage, be it patios, be it on the sidewalk or taking up parking spaces, I think that everything all these small businesses have done in the municipality of Jasper has been commendable. I think that each business within that community should be evaluated on their own merit. And some of the patios, 3 that come to mind without naming names, were not even used. There was nobody ever sitting them in the entire time. Case in point, in front of our little mall, I think I can count on one hand how many times anybody was sitting in it. Yet Candace, prior to COVID, ran her operation without any hurdles in front of my small business. For I can remember, I've been here 8 years, 6 years of that. She had Harleys out front with no issue. And that brought business to my business. And for her to have to go through those hurdles, not just on the Harley business, but for any of these to comply with one logo, I think it's short-sighted. We all stand on our own merit, their own branding. And I think that each business with their patios need to stand on their own merit. And if you're not utilizing them, give business that are going to utilize this space, i.e. the Harley store, the opportunity to thrive. And up until COVID, she did just that. And when the Harley store was busy, the deli was busy, the pharmacy, it was, people attract people. And she had no place for them to park, let alone service her customers. And I think that everything that everyone has done, be it tents or umbrellas, I think that everybody's managed the last couple of years pretty darn well. And we've survived, and it's a learning for all of us over the years.
Mr. Leach.
And I think
30 seconds, Mr. Leach.
Okay, I think that, thank you for the opportunity. I think it's short-sighted to think we'd all have the same logos. And I think that my neighbor in the Harley store needs some serious consideration. And anybody with patios that are not utilized should have to either justify that or not have a patio. And let the people that can thrive the opportunity. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Are there questions from members of council for Mr. Leach? I see none, so we thank you, Mr. Leach. Sorry we had some technical difficulties, but glad that you hung in there. Happy to have received your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Before we conclude the public presentations, I will remind council again that Mr. Walker is present and has submitted a letter that will be included in the record. But if you happen to have questions of Mr. Walker, he would be happy to respond. And it has been brought to my attention that I may have missed in the opening of this session to confirm that we received this morning a submission from Mr. Sawant on behalf of Jasper Flato. And so just for clarity, we acknowledge that made it to council in time to have been read prior to the opening of today's session, and it will be one of those documents that is included in the minutes as a record of these proceedings. If there are no other presentations, and I take it nobody is waiting online to get in, and we have exhausted the list that was prepared at 1:30 when we announced that we would close opportunities to engage. So I will call an end to the public hearing section of the meeting. I think in fairness to all, it would be appropriate to call a short recess during which councillors might configure a motion that we might soon debate. But I will give everybody an opportunity to consider what has been heard, to digest it a bit. And I will say, take a brief recess for 6 minutes, returning at, on my clock, 3:15. So for those of you engaged with us on the Zoom platform, please stand by until 3:15, and we will then continue with discussion and debate among council. Thank you all. Thank you all. We are now back in session. We have received a total of 14 separate submissions, equally split between presentations, either live or over the Zoom platform today, and another 7 that council has received electronically, all of which are part of the record. And we have twice heard from administration with respect to the recommendation for direction that is before us. I will invite councillors to engage in discussion and perhaps a motion and debate about the direction to give to administration. It is, well, we are now in a position where we are constituted not as committee, but as council. So just reflect that the recommendation came to council in a different format as committee of the whole. So there is a very slight technical difference to be made in whatever direction we give today, but council has indicated that they simply need direction and they will then return to Parks Canada with an application for a discretionary use permit or potentially not, depending on the direction you might take. So I will open the floor. Is there any councillor who at this stage is prepared to make a motion for consideration of council? Councillor Demoda.
I do. I have a motion written here, and my intent here is to put it forward, and I'm open to friendly amendments. If council collectively feels like we don't need to put anything forward, then I can retract as well. So that's my intentions. I think that no holds barred goes, and so I would like to propose that council direct administration to apply for a discretionary use permit for commercial use of public space, including the prescribed parameters. Installations be permitted from May 1st to October 24th. Number 2, installations may be located on the sidewalk with pedestrian extensions in the parking lane. And number 3, installations may be located in the parking lane with appropriate safety measures in place. I don't know if those are all vague or that's good enough for administration. And again, I'm open to friendly amendments. And while we're all gathering that, if I could speak to my motion, then.
But before I ask you to speak to the motion, I just want to confirm that I understand the motion.
Yes, sir.
And know what is on the table. So the motion is that council direct administration to apply for a discretionary use permit for commercial use of public space, including a list of conditions. And those conditions, I think there were 3. One is May 1st to October 24th. I'm sorry, the second one, can you repeat that?
Yeah. Basically, just going with the second recommendation from the administration with a little bit of a tweak there. So installations may be located on the sidewalk with pedestrian sidewalk extensions located in the parking.
Thank you. And the third one?
Yes, and I was going to make this its own bullet with number 2, but I thought to make it number 3 for more clarity. So installations may be located in the parking lane with appropriate safety measures in place. And that's specifically not referring to Jersey barriers, so that we might have an opportunity.
And that is the extent of the motion?
Yes.
It's just for clarity, then nothing about the 2022 season. This would be for 2022 and ongoing.
Well, actually, I would, you know what, I would clarify from May 1st to October 24th, 2022, and then I'll explain why.
All right. I believe I have a relatively clear understanding of the motion. So if you wish to speak to the motion, go ahead.
Okay, so, you know, I was trying to form a motion yesterday, and I spent most of the afternoon contemplating, bouncing around, checking things off and circling things. And, you know, I realized that, you know, the proposed discretionary permit request is kind of a narrow blanket ruling, and it's not an equitable solution. You know, we've heard anecdotal evidence and people have expressed some displeasure with some of the Jersey barriers and other things that revolve around it. I found that no matter what you do as a council or council, you're always going to get pushback. And, you know, we have to take a little bit of that pushback, but, you know, understand that, you know, we have to look at the bigger picture and what's the better benefit for the community as a whole. So, you know, we've heard from some other business owners in the community that indicated that they had no negative feedback at all. And, that should have some weight as well. If we're going to put weight, anecdotal weight on people saying that they're displeased with certain elements, we should also give some weight to people that are helping the other side of the argument. So, aesthetically pleasing is in the eye of the beholder. So I think that we should take those things into consideration. So I use number 1, installations be permitted from May 1st to October 24th. I'm glad that the chamber had indicated that May 1st would be more ideal. I already had that as an intention. It makes sense to me. And October 24th, as the day after Dark Skies Festival is here in Jasper, and I don't know if that was taken into consideration, but if we do have nice weather and people do have their patio set up with proper heating, it might give them an advantage to stay open a little later. So, and this is something that administration said that we need to look at for situations down the road. And I think that bylaw 193, which speaks to our use of public space, needs to be amended, because there's direct information in there about sidewalk seating. There's mentions of the farmers market in there and various other things, but it doesn't provide any opportunities for retail specifically. So I think with the dates and other things, we need to review that bylaw and make it a little bit more equitable for the community. So, and then the other two, it's just the installations. I think we understand the sidewalk seating scenario or sidewalk retail. If people want to take advantage of that with the walk around, and as we've heard from various business owners, that we should also have the ability for installations to be located in the parking lane, because some businesses aren't conducive to have sidewalk use. So that's it for a start. I wanted to keep it short. Before I sign off on that, I did request today to have a PowerPoint presentation to go through so that the viewers online could see some of the stuff that I wanted to talk to. I was under the impression that we could submit things up to 15 minutes before the meeting today, but I didn't realize that was just for the public, and that didn't give the rest of council the ability to participate as well. So I didn't want to put anybody offside, so I agreed not to have that. I did put the presentation, my photos on my Facebook page as well as Instagram if people want to look at it. Basically, the pictures go through various places in Europe that are using different setups that look aesthetically pleasing, using different colors. And there's one slide in there of what it looks like to have a bike lane next to sidewalk seating, which I thought was interesting. And then just some of the precedent that's already been set in the community around umbrellas attached to buildings and logos and things like that that have already been approved or allowed. So I think that because of that, we shouldn't be constricting ourselves to the other recommendations that are here, and that's why I've left them out. And the final photo is a picture of some of the rainbow flags that we have up in the community. And I use that as evidence that it's not part of our architectural motif, but it's a sign of what we can do when we collaborate and work together for a diverse and unique situation that we're in. And I think that, considering all things Parks Canada, the users or visitors, business owners, councillors, administration, that if we work hard enough together, we can work to make a plausible and meaningful and adaptable operation for everyone alike. So that's it. Thank you. Sorry for that.
All right, thank you for the motion and speaking to the motion. I just want to go back to the precise wording that you have proposed. And I thought you might address it in the third point of the motion, but you did not. So I want to be clear, the third condition that you proposed, I think, is that installations may be located in the parking lane with, to be the next word, so safety measures in place.
Appropriate safety measures in place. it's pretty big. I understand that, and I didn't want to use the term approved because nothing's been really approved yet. So that could be businesses working with, you know, a municipality to make it.
Thank you. Appropriate was all I needed to hear for the third time. Thank you. All right. There is a motion before us. Debate. Councilor Wilson.
Well, if it wasn't Councilor Demoto making that motion, I would have made it as well. I fully support that motion, and I'm really glad that there's many of the items off of the attachment A left out. I think that in the last couple of years, during COVID, we've seen the business community come up with solutions to so many challenges that have been put up against them. And they've succeeded. And so I feel like I want to put my faith in those businesses and that are going to build patios that suit their business and suit our community. And if it doesn't suit our community, people won't go there. People, like, you know, I suggest that we let business be business, and the best patio wins. So, you know, that's honestly, why are we meddling in why would we meddle in putting parameters to capitalism? Let's let those businesses build the best patios they can. Conformity is bland. I would hate to see a whole bunch of yellow and brown umbrellas just because, sorry, let me update myself, green and white, because we're set in a national park and those are Parks Canada colors. I feel that we should let the businesses excel coming out of COVID, and I want to give them as much opportunity to do so as possible. And no business is the same. Trying to suggest that all businesses, or sorry, all patios should be on the street, sidewalk, or in the parking lane would just diminish their ability to succeed as we're moving forward out of the pandemic. And so, thank you, Councillor Demoto, for the motion. I fully support it.
Councillor Keller-Hentke.
I also support the motion, and I really like that you left it open because for some of these businesses that are not restaurants, they will be able to explore the space also where they're, whether it's the Harley motorcycle shop or whether it's a bike shop that wants to put rentals or whatever in that parking lane. I think it's a great idea. Also, I like that you took away a lot of the recommendations also. You know, when you look at a lot of our businesses in town, if you look at the decor outside right now, they're all different colors. And who are we to tell somebody how to run their business? It has been accepted by parks up to now. They haven't gone and told anybody to take down their awnings or anything like that. So if we start bringing in restrictions for the patio seating, what will happen down the road? Will these people then have to conform on whether, as you said, the sandwich board has a logo or outside the business has a logo? I think, as you said, it's open. People should be able to run their business as they see fit.
Further debate?
No, I didn't.
I just saw Councillor Melvin busy writing notes. I thought he was prepared to speak. Councillor Wilson, I saw your hand, but you have spoken, so. But I will return given the nature of the subject. I have some concerns about the motion. And I appreciate that we are in debate and we had ample opportunity previously to direct questions to administration. And administration has twice presented us a recommendation indicating that other conditions have a reasonable chance of getting approval from Parks Canada. And so I wonder, without addressing any of the other proposed conditions, whether we might be subjecting the business sector that we are hoping to support with a negative response, which puts everybody in jeopardy. And so I am interested in three issues. Firstly, whether the direction might be limited to a request for a discretionary use permit for the current year. And so not open-ended. That there be some wording as to who might decide what are appropriate safety measures, because otherwise we replace a number of ambiguities with another ambiguity, and that concerns me. I think to some extent what we have heard is that the business sector requires certainty. They have to know the standard which they are expected to meet, and the standard that says appropriate is going to be challenging, particularly if it is to take effect May 1st. I don't know what that means, whether anybody can be prepared for an appropriate standard that is not yet defined in about a month and a week. And finally, knowing that those other issues remain alive, at least in some minds, and in particular in Parks Canada, I think we would be well advised to figure out some way now to address them. And I would be content with either an additional point on this motion or a following motion that council establish with interested parties, including Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce, the business sector, and Parks Canada, a working group or task force to further consider the other items that have been presented to us as potential conditions. And my fear is that if we simply do not address it at all, we are likely, more likely at least, to have our discretionary use permit application denied, and everybody suffers. And I accept what we heard here, particularly today, that business needs to proceed and needs to know the parameters under which they proceed for the immediate year. But just about every presentation recognized a willingness to further discuss and debate and resolve the other issues. And I think if we recognize that, then I think that we would follow the recommendation more closely of our own administration, that that is the type of proposal in a discretionary use application that would have a better chance of success. And again, my fear is that if we don't at least propose a manner of dealing with the other matters, we may run into a different roadblock and jeopardize the opportunity for anyone to have commercial use of public space for this year. So those are my comments on it, that we could deal with it by way of amendments to the motion on the table or a separate motion, but that is my view of the motion right now. That leaves me a bit uncomfortable to not find some way to address the other outstanding issues. Councillor Wilson, you were next, and then Councillor Moore, did I see your hand?
So what I was going to say actually directly leads into what you have just mentioned, and that is that it is so vague and to know what is acceptable and what isn't. And we don't know that it is acceptable because we don't have control over that. What we do need to do is first apply. So, you know, take this as a, like, for example, as a, for your building permit. You're gonna apply for your development permit, and then Parks Canada will come back because they are the ones answering, you know, yes or no, and they will give you stipulations on what they believe. So we can sit here and have a task force and suggest, well, this may be an issue, this may be an issue, this may be, but we don't fully know. And tents are somehow dangerous or not allowed. We don't know that. They haven't put it on paper, suggesting no business community or no municipality, you don't get your discretionary use permit because you are going to allow tents. But we have to get them to say that first. We need the answer to what is allowed and what isn't, because unfortunately that isn't in our wheelhouse, which it should be. Why is a municipality going to an outside body suggesting how we can use our streets? We're paying rent to use them, so we should be able to decide how we use our commercial space. So I think unfortunately we have to apply first, and then Parks Canada has to, you know, promptly respond, and then we have those items that don't pass or that are hang-ups to getting our discretionary use permit. You know, administration has been in some discussion with some members of Parks Canada, but are those members of Parks Canada who were on a task force suggesting that this might go through? Are they making the decision? I don't know. So we have to apply. The administration has to apply, and then we deal with the hurdles that are proposed to us, or maybe they say, well, this is what the municipality would like. Municipality, go ahead, but we don't know that, and so we can't. If we start a task force, we just are deliberating over things that may hang us up, not have hung us up. And then I guess just to speak to the other two items, Maryland, yeah, I would definitely support that the direction be limited to 2022, because it does seem as if there's still a conversation to be had, but we have to apply now to move this forward for this year. And then the appropriate safety measures are, I would assume, are very straightforward and would be addressed by the Alberta Health and Safety Act. And we could work with the local Alberta Health Safety inspector on what is required to instill safety. We do it with all the restaurants anyway. I'm assuming that that same individual would be able to approve a patio.
Councillor DeBoer.
Yeah, and just for a point of clarification, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to have an open-ended kind of motion going forward, because one thing that I really like about this council is that, like, we've really embraced the spirit of collaboration and consensus building. So I thought that instead of having, you know, we can have an omnibus kind of permit, we're only applying for one permit. So I didn't feel it necessary to have a bunch of different motions. We could still have them, but I think that we can make something workable here within our own discussions. So that I'm more than happy to amend, you know, some of the wording in step number 2 and step number 3, and add on top of installations may be located in the parking lane with appropriate safety measures in place, including the use of Jersey barriers for the 2022 season. And would that make it a little bit more acceptable? You know, that may include, yeah, may also include Jersey barriers for the 2022 season. And then I'm very open as well as to the desire to establish a working group or task force with the wording that you provided. I couldn't write fast enough.
I suffer from the same affliction. Councillor Hall.
I have a question maybe for administration regarding Jersey barriers. Why were they, was it a quick thing to be used because we were trying to get these patios up quickly. I did hear, I believe it was Stavro Corrigata saying he hasn't seen them in his travels. And then I noticed the photos you shared this morning, Rico, of patios, none of them are open to cars. It's all walkable areas. I wonder if that is a reason that we've used geodesic areas, because there's cars involved in our patios and maybe people haven't seen them around the world because typically there's not cars in these. Just a question.
Your worship, if you'd like, I can speak to a little bit of what I understand the history to be, even though I wasn't here for the startup of the program. My understanding was that it was a quick response to COVID and the requirement, for businesses to stop indoor dining. I think everybody, businesses, chamber, the muni, and parks included, were looking for a quick solution to be able to do that. And I think Jersey Bears offered that sort of made in place, pick them up, drop them in, and start going the next day type of solution. And so, to my understanding, that was why they were allowed and accepted. I think that there was either an explicit or implicit understanding that that was a temporary solution in response to the emergence of COVID. I don't know to what extent that ever got defined, but my understanding of the history was that everybody recognized there was a need to act quickly, and Jersey Bears offered an opportunity to do so.
Go ahead, Councillor Hall.
Just a quick follow-up. Are they, I'm assuming Jersey barriers are made with some kind of traffic regulation. I don't know. To me, it seems safer than perhaps a wooden structure with a vehicle. I wasn't here when this was done, but I did pay attention, but I don't know the answers to these questions. Thank you.
Mrs. Dawn, administration appears to have an answer, so go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hall. The public safety aspect of placing anything but cars in the parking lane is something that myself and our licensing and enforcement manager, Mr. Jones, discussed and researched pretty extensively. As we discussed earlier, it's one of the factors that goes into a decision around how we set up patios. Certainly Jersey barriers in the construction industry or traffic industry, if you can call it that way, is a pretty common way to keep vehicles from hitting each other, and in this case, keep vehicles from entering an area where pedestrians or diners might be. The recommendation from administration to put patios on a sidewalk and put a boardwalk in the parking lane was certainly based in that discussion as well. And we did receive information from our insurance company and our risk advisors and researched that quite extensively. And Jersey barriers are probably the most effective way of keeping vehicles out of any area. Having that said, there's challenges around architecture. There's other challenges as well. What we were contemplating, just to give you an example or to try to illustrate it differently, is that if we were to put boardwalks in the parking lane, a lot of these structures in other community have a metal plinth at the bottom of it. So it's not just a wooden structure that if a vehicle hits it, it explodes essentially with the people on it. I'm sorry for that image. But so a metal plinth on the boardwalk, putting a planter upstream from where the vehicles are coming. So if they were to hit something, they would hit the planter first, and then there'd be a certain amount of space between the planter and the boardwalk, etc. I mean, you can see how that might function. And the premise is also that pedestrians are not there as long as diners would be. They are through traffic, but given how busy our sidewalks are in the summer, arguably, there would be a number of people on that boardwalk at any given time, which could be equivalent to diners sitting there. And speaking with our risk advisors, liquor being served on patios that are in the parking lane, and how, they even implied that staff at restaurants would have to monitor, or, you'd have a training. I mean, if you talk risk management, you can start going into some really extensive measures around what is and isn't acceptable safety-wise. And I think that as far as our research goes, there are no guidelines around safety. So to Councillor Wilson's point earlier that we could talk to the AHS. AHS does not have jurisdiction or advice or anything of that of the like on those structures. It's about us as a municipality allowing use on our property, and what kind of risk are we willing to tolerate, and where Mr. Jones and I are might be different than where Mr. Gibbon is and where council is. So it's part of the conversation, but Jersey barriers are recognized as the most effective way to keep vehicles out of places, and that's why they were used on a temporary basis. Having that said, Jersey barriers can be covered with wooden structures. Like, that's something that's been done in other communities as well. There are options. So getting some direction from council on what would be the appropriate way to handle those patios, then we can go back and look at our risk assessment with that new information and go from there.
Councillor Wilson.
Well, just speaking further to the Jersey barriers, they are in their environment. Jersey barriers are to be used on roadways and to protect and direct. And so I'm assuming this came from Parks Canada suggesting that Jersey barriers were, what's the word, industrial? Well, so is the street, so they're in their element and we're making them better. We're making them prettier or whatever the word you want to use. But yeah, well, I think you can paint them whatever color. I don't even want to wade into the colors, but because I've seen some that are all red and they look great. All black, they look great. So if we have to talk about colors, well, then maybe we can appease the architectural motif that we painted proper mountain landscape color, I guess. But the Jersey barriers, I think, serve the exact purpose to which they're made, is to divert traffic or protect space at their people. And so I think we're using them in the exact way that they are meant to be used. And I would challenge whoever's suggesting that they're industrial in nature, that we're using them in the right application.
Councillor Melvin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do see in the Parks Canada submission that they talk about Jersey barriers appearing industrial in nature. You can dress up a Jersey barrier to look like a fence if you wanted to paint it. You could put flowers on top and make it appear that it's an actual wooden structure if you chose to. I think, the fact that it's a concrete barrier and painted the way they have been may have not been appealing, but given the mural project that's coming into the community with what can be done with walls, I can only imagine what someone could do with the Jersey barrier. And I think, they're an appropriate barrier and they need to be dressed up to become more of what the town character should be, which is also referenced in this document. I didn't see anything in the document that talked to the vibe or to the hub of excitement that the patios created, or the life and energy that patios create. And I'm worried that, as we try to get through the dry conditions of trying to create sidewalk seating, we're going to miss what all of the presenters really talked about, is what it brings to the community. The canopies, not tents, the canopies bring, I think, a certain character as well, logoed or not. But I think that's how we need to pursue discussions with finding conditions that are appropriate with Parks Canada, that we can move forward with that kind of underlying intent of what do we want to bring to the community. We want to celebrate what we had in the past for at least one more year as we come out of COVID, and to help give some certainty to the businesses that are currently operating. The task force, I think, will help move us forward in next year's direction. And I'm hoping that we can, work through the motions to get to a point where we have something we can go to Parks Canada, keeping these things in mind. And I'm glad we have a motion on the floor, and there may be another motion or two that'll be proposed as it relates to canopies and how they may or may not be used along with umbrellas as well. So I am in favor of the motions, but I want to frame it in this context of what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. When you say you're trying to frame it, are you trying to reframe the motion? Do you wish to reframe the motion?
No, I'm happy with the motion, but I sense there'll be another motion or two afterwards to help define additional conditions so that administration has an opportunity to complete the necessary conditions for a discretionary use permit.
Thank you. Any further debate? I simply want to be clear then about what the motion is. The wording of the third condition, I think, remains as appropriate safety measures. And I struggle with who determines what is appropriate. We've heard again from administration that apparently there is a dearth of provincial legislation. So who determines what is appropriate? And even though the motion says appropriate safety measure, is the color of a Jersey barrier part of the appropriateness? It may in fact enhance the safety measure to make it as bright as you can. So I struggle with, again, the fluidity of some of the language, so I don't know what appropriate might mean. I think the intent is to focus on what aids safety. But if color is part of the appropriateness, then I don't know where that leaves us for certain, but I'm prepared to call the question. But Councillor Demota, it is your motion and you have the right to close debate, so go ahead.
Well, I'm not ready to close yet. I do want to add clarification to number 3. I said I was willing to add, and I will add, including Jersey barriers for the 2022 season. And just by saying that is because we already have that in place. And with the working group, with the other agencies, including the municipality, we can hopefully in 12 months, establish what appropriate safety measures are. So I'm kind of hoping that we can go with the status quo of what's there and then develop something, because, okay, the criteria that we have here is still pretty big. And even looking at our own use of public space bylaw, there aren't very many things. So I was conflicted as well, just as the mayor's conflicted right now. So I'm just going with what's available. So for number 3, I wanted to add, because of the mayor's suggestion, including Jersey barriers for the 2022 season. If that helps the process. And then for number 4, I was going to add the I'm going to ask the mayor to read out his addition for establishing a task force or working group with interested parties. Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Hall has your hand.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Councillor Hall.
Thank you. Would we want to include tents in this as well? We haven't talked about that yet, have we?
We have not.
I wonder if we should. There are, this is just for 2022 we're talking.
Well, we don't have clarification on what defines a tent or an umbrella at this point. So for me to put that forward for a discretionary use permit doesn't make sense at this point, because we can't ask for what doesn't exist. Or we couldn't even get out of business owners what they know exists. So until we get a clear interpretation of what a tent is, we've had one council refer to it as a canopy, and that makes the most sense. A canopy includes both, and I think they're both workable, but that's my own opinion. So it's really hard to set direction on the material that we don't have to work with.
Councillor Demota, you asked whether I might recite a fourth condition.
Please do.
Have you considered the issue a little further? Again, if the direction is that administration apply for a discretionary use permit for 2022, then an additional, not condition, but an additional point to the motion could be that, and that council work with Parks Canada and others to establish a working group to further consider conditions to apply to commercial use of public lands in future years.
I'm very happy to accept the amendment to the opening of that, to that motion itself before the conditions. If it was recorded by administration in the manner that you wanted to present. I can't write that.
I have it written, I can confirm with administration. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just in regards to the working group, have we had an actual working group in the past? This year, maybe not, but I'm just trying to think back in past years. Did we have a working group regarding patios, or has it just been administration and Parks Canada? And then input from, so not a working group as such, but input from businesses.
Councillor Calhoun.
Just to Councillor Hall's point, I just want to clarify, so with this application for the permit, we're asking to go ahead with the current season of 2022 with Jersey barriers. That will also include current tents and current umbrellas, as it has been in the past. Councillor Demore?
May I clarify?
Sure, that'd be great. That's what I'm asking.
So this was going to be part of my closing statement. I reached out to as many businesses and people that operate using sidewalk seating and parking lane seating and in the community. And across the board, for the most part, what was explained to me is that we cannot operate under these conditions, and council has to establish better parameters and, essentially push back on a lot of these things, because from what I've heard, their sentiment is that Parks Canada should be to preserve and protect the park and the animals in it. And, and we're also there for all Canadians. I've heard the spiel over and over again, and the municipality should be governing over the little things. I won't go on to my thing. So if other councillors want to put forward motions, I could not wrap my head around going any further than what I have in this motion because of what I've been told and for what makes sense to me, because nothing else there makes sense to me to go forward with. All those little measurements for the sidewalk fencing and for the crosswalk fencing and stuff, walkarounds, that could be worked out. We don't need to tell Parks Canada, these are the conditions for you to allow us that. We should have that as an ability within our own bylaw to work with. And if it's not there, then we have to work towards doing that. And if administration feels like it should be there, then maybe we can put a motion towards that. I just don't feel comfortable right now. I think that we have enough ability to just work with our businesses to establish that. If they want to get a workaround, these are the parameters. If you want an umbrella, this is what, you can try to do or whatever it is. We can't work under the conditions in there. And that's what I've heard. So I'm not presenting anything further than what I have.
May I ask one more question?
You may.
This is for administration. Sorry, this is for administration. So in the past, when somebody does their sidewalk seating and they want to put up umbrellas and tents, do then they make an application to Parks Canada for that, or is that allowed by us as municipality?
Your worship, for Councillor Keller MB, there are, it's important to make a distinction between the discretionary use application that we're recommending, the process there to say, is it okay to use this area of land for this purpose under these conditions? And that's what we're talking about right now. There are separate processes which administration isn't giving any, advice on at this stage under fire code and under building code. And so once you start under those two different pieces of legislation, which again are different pieces of legislation, once you intrude into that space by your proposed development, I'll use that term really broadly, then you're kind of on your own. If the authority having jurisdiction for issuing building permits in parks determines that your proposed development meets the standard for requiring a building permit, then you would be required to submit and go through that process. There are stages where tents, and there are a couple of common definitions that are used by the municipalities, but I think generally means a freestanding structure with up to 3 enclosed sides. Tents over a certain size require a building permit under the building permitting processes and acts. Tents under that size don't require it. And again, that's where administration's recommendation of no tents means that if there were no tents, there would be zero chance of running into the requirement to get a building permit, which is what we're trying to advise. Again, appreciating the discussion here about, it sounds like there's a desire explicitly to enable or allow tents. And we would just have to be mindful of the fact that tents at a certain stage start to move into a different piece of legislation, which administration wasn't proposing or considering here. What we're expressly trying to do is to avoid getting into that area.
Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Just probably a point for clarification. Are we applying for a development permit?
Your worship, the recommendation in the report is that administration is recommending that council approve submitting a discretionary use permit.
Right.
So again, it's about the use of the land.
Right. So we're not developing the land. We're using the land. And from what I understand, if I can get more clarification, whether it's from the mayor or administration, the architectural motif is designed for development permit applications, correct? Is that essentially what, because there's so much ambiguity and I can't make a motion that is not what we're going out to do. So if our jurisdiction, we can't say no umbrellas, because if people want to put up umbrellas, and if an umbrella is usable, they can use it. If they're going to make something that requires a development permit, that's out of our jurisdiction anyway. So to say whether an umbrella or a tent classifies an umbrella, we've heard a description of 3 closed sides. Well, if you don't have any closed sides on it, is it an umbrella with 4 posts on it? You know what I mean? So what constitutes a tent? We don't know, so I can't go put that in my motion. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not a workable condition. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but this is where I've been stuck on. I spent all afternoon and I've talked to various amount of people. If I could find something more streamlined to propose, then I would have. And and if it's too cumbersome and too hard, then I'll withdraw. And if somebody wants to come up with something else, I'm here in the spirit of, again, collaboration and consensus.
Any further debate?
Are you scared to ask me to close down? I'm just about exhausted all night.
I appreciate your willingness to make a motion. I appreciate the clarity of it. And I appreciate the comments that have been made about why it includes some things and doesn't include other things. I personally am looking for a, well, I don't know if it's a cleaner solution, but I am attracted to some of the reasoning that we heard today. And I thought that Mrs. Pavlov, on behalf of the chamber and in response to Councillor Wilson, gave a very clear indication of a route forward, and that would be to take what is now condition number 7 in Schedule 8 for the 2022 season, and we could say commencing May 1st and continuing to October 24th. Installations that have previously been used in 2021, and I intentionally say non-conforming because they did conform, and they're only non-conforming if we change the rules. So installations that have previously been used in 2021 will be accepted, full stop. I am persuaded that the business sector has invested in patios, and although some individuals may not like all of the results aesthetically, I accept the arguments that we heard today that businesses want their places to be attractive because they want to attract people. And they attract people not only to their business, but to neighboring businesses. So let attraction forward where it does. Leave out all the rest of that, which we don't need right now to worry about logos because it's impractical given supply chain issues to expect any operator to go out at this stage to buy new umbrellas or to deal with the color of a tent or anything else. So as Mrs. Pavlov indicated, with the exception of the non-conforming rules, full stop after will be accepted. And then secondly, indicate that we're prepared to establish with others a working group to sort out all the remaining issues for future years. It just seems to me it's a little bit cleaner. It works for me. It's not entirely different than what you like.
No, I'm very happy with that. And this is, if I may, this is exactly what I wanted to do. Like, if you got something to add, you want to add it, then please do. If I'm missing out on it, I think I love it. It's leaving out the tents and everything like that. And please excuse me, Mrs. Pavlov, for not adding that. And you, I think that period after accepted and changing non-conforming to existing. So as number, I think it would be number 4 now for the 2022 season, existing installations that had previously been used in 2021 be accepted. You've already included the working group within the motion itself. So unless there's something that you think should be changed there, I'm more than happy to go with that.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Councillor Roxer.
My only concern with that wording is, does it include, sorry.
Press it till the red light goes on.
My only concern, the red light was on, my only concern is would wording like that include people like the motorcycle shop and the bike shops and potentially any new patios of restaurants that didn't have them last year.
Excellent question. Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Would they not be incorporated in your first 2 points? You could either be on the street, you could be on the sidewalk. But as well, you can do whatever you did last year. And so this is really like his first 2 points, I think, state that any new ones would be, you'd still be able to do a new one.
I'm just looking for any final debate, and I appreciate this has been a work in progress. We started with a motion prepared with, in the absence of objection from anyone in council, to hear your reworded motion. But if you need a couple of minutes to write it out, I think we might all benefit from clarity at this point. So unless there is a debatable point that anyone wishes to get on the table now.
I'm going to ask you to word the addition of what motion.
I'm inclined then to call a brief recess.
Okay.
While we sort out exactly the motion upon which
Sounds good.
the question will be called. So again, to members of the public who are tuned in, please excuse us. We will take about a 5-minute recess to try and confirm the particulars of a motion upon which we shall vote shortly. So if you can stop the recording, please, and we'll, not sure what time. Thank you for that brief recess, during which I believe Councillor Demota has perfected his motion. And so prior to calling the question, Councillor Demota, I will ask that you read the revised form of your motion into record.
Are you going to deny me closing debate comments? Okay, all right. I was going to have a nice thing brought to you by the color blue. For the sake of our exhaustion, I would like to propose that council direct administration to apply for a discretionary use permit for commercial use of public space, including the prescribed conditions. 1, that installations be permitted May 1st to October 24th, 2022. Number 2, installations may be located on the sidewalk with pedestrian extensions in the parking lane. Number 3, this has changed a little bit. And let me know if I need to slow down. That's okay. Okay. Installations may be located in the parking lane with safety measures in place, including Jersey barriers. Number 4, for the 2022 season, installations that had previously been used in 2021 be accepted, period. And number 5, council work with other interested parties to establish a working group to consider further conditions which might apply to commercial use of public space in future years.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Demota. Just in terms of wording, is there anything council requires for further clarity?
Is there anything you need for further clarity?
One matter I don't need a change, but in the, I think it's the 3rd bullet, including Jersey barriers means the possibility of including, but not necessarily including. It's not a requirement to have a Jersey barrier, but you might.
The possibility of including Jersey barriers. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? There are none opposed? That is carried. Thank you all for that. Thank you to members of the public who engaged with us. We appreciate all of the input we received. And that will go forward, and we will hear in due course about the status of the discretionary use application, which administration is now directed to forward. We called this special meeting principally to deal with the business that has just been concluded, but Because we won't meet now for a few weeks, we were asked to include two other matters to today's business. The first of which is the arena ice plant replacement contract. Mr. Gibbon, can you speak to that, please?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I'll speak to it just very briefly, kind of hand it off to Mr. Reid, the Director of Community Development, who's taken on this project. One thing that I will note is Mr. Reid has an update to the recommendation. Administration asked, the process was somewhat lengthy. Administration has gone back to confirm the pricing with the selected party. It was over the period of time where they would hold that pricing, and so there is a corrected number that Mr. Reid is going to share with Council for your motion, but it is still within the approved capital budget for this project. Mr. Reid, over to you.
Thank you, CAO Gibbon, and thank you for the time, Your Worship and Council. So as CAO Gibbon just indicated, so the recommendation before you is that Council award the Jasper Arena Ice Plant replacement contract to ICOM Refrigeration in the amount of, and this is the correction, $2,484,353.93. So again, that's $2,484,353.93. And that roughly $151,000 increase is based entirely on timing and the change in the supply chain, world economy. All of those factors have played into some of the components of the project requiring more funding. But as mentioned by CAO Gibbon, that is still within the budget as approved in the 2020 capital budget. So the background, of course, the Jasper Arena is part of the Activity Center, a town-owned facility located within the town site. There are two separate buildings on the site, the Fitness and Aquatic Center and the Jasper Activity Center and the Arena. The Activity Center also houses the municipal administration offices, Wildflowers, Child Care Center, Auto School Care, the curling rink, and various community spaces, including the multipurpose community hall. The existing arena ice plant, which supports the ice making for both the arena and curling rinks, is at end of life and is located next to the main entrance and across from the entrance to the Child Care Center at the facility. The municipality of Jasper has included this project in the 2020 capital budget, and this contract amount is within the approved budget, as I mentioned. WSP has been hired to provide project management services for this project, and as such coordinated a bidding and selection process as described in their attached summary, including the recommendation of ICOM Refrigeration as the preferred bidder. Administration also supports this path forward. It is anticipated that the project will run from summer 2022 through to construction completion in the fall of 2022, late 2022. The strategic relevance, as council is aware, the organizational health, improve the organizational health of the municipality by enhancing operational effectiveness, efficiency, responsiveness, and adaptability. And the three dots I would mention also, there is a safety improvement here to be found as well. The project will be funded through the approved 2020 capital budget. The next page, we had hoped to have members of the WSP team here, and Mr. Randy Mayhew was prepared to speak to this item, but of course, with the first item taking that bit of extra time, the WSP crew had to go to other meetings. But the short, to do it any service whatsoever, I will say that WSP did, in coordination with the municipality, prepare a request for proposals to provide design build services of the Jasper Ice Plant replacement. This process was absolutely from the get-go to be a separate building outside of the normal building that we've got, and that is for many reasons, not the least of which is safety, but secondarily to that, there's some flexibility that we gain from that approach. The RFP was released on December 6th and closed on January 25th, and we had a response from two proponents, ICOM and Brannex. The evaluation team based their evaluation on the criteria set forth in the RFP, and I won't read all that out, but after careful consideration, the evaluation team's results and averages determined that ICOM Refrigeration to be the most appropriate proponent to facilitate the completion of the scope of work. As such, WSP recommends award for the Jasper Ice Plant replacement contract to ICOM Refrigeration in the amount of, again, the corrected amount, $2,484,353.93. And as At the end of this, I'm available for any questions council may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. Questions from councilors? Councilor Demota?
I just need clarification on the new amount there. I got 2,484,000, and then I thought I had 53 cents on the end, but I missed the hundreds number. What are the three digits after 484?
Certainly, Mayor Ireland, through to Councilor Demota, it's $2,484,353.93.
Okay.
I hope my enunciation was good there over Zoom.
Your enunciation's great. You just said that's okay.
Councilor Melnick?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you and Mr. Given to Mr. Reid. This contract price, is this a guaranteed price, or do we still have a possibility for additional fees to be added through the construction and delivery of the ice plant by the end of the year?
So great question through Your Worship to Councilor Melnick. The short answer is this is a design build contract, so this is a fixed price. However, as the project goes along, there will also be contingencies for unknown site conditions we will have to accommodate, but also should we find opportunities in connection with the Reno project or connection with perhaps some other grants that may become available to maximize this project as it goes, there may be increases, but no, this is a fixed price contract for a design build of what we're asking for. I could go into more detail, but I probably spoke already too much.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Councilor Kelleher?
Thank you, Mr. Reid. Is there holdbacks should this not be completed on time?
Another great question through Your Worship to Councillor Keller-Hampy. We are not proposing a performance-based contract here, so there are no performance penalties or holdbacks based on time. There are only holdbacks based on performance of the work, but not based on time. And the schedule that this proponent has suggested matches with what are the start of our season. So it would be great, but I would like to mention or point out that the way that this will work is that this system will be installed, built, connected, and then at a certain point we will sort of make this the system and take away the old system. If that happens before the old system makes the ice, that's the best, but it is not a requirement. We could build the ice with the old system one more time and then connect this one up should there be time delays, for an item that perhaps is held on a cruise ship that gets stuck. I don't know why our stuff is shipped by cruise ships, but you know what I mean. If there is a shipping delay of some component, then we will still be able to provide service to our residents with the old ice plant, switch over to this one and take the old one away almost at our convenience. Does that make that clear?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Reid.
Mr. Reid, I have a couple of questions. You indicated that the new amount is within the budgeted amount. Can you confirm what the budgeted amount was?
Well, so this project also has the contingency. It also has the project management fees. And I believe that total is I don't have that right in front of me, I apologize, but it's something like 3 million. So we are within the space that's allotted for this component of the work, plus our project management, plus any contingencies.
Thank you for that. I note as well that there were submissions from only 2 proponents. Did that come as a surprise?
That is before my time, but I will tell you based on my experience in other municipalities that this is specialized work, and it has been a long time coming where this project has gone ebbed and flowed. So given the fact that there are only so many players in this industry, I'm not surprised to only see 2. and also our process. I'm not surprised to see only 2. They were both really strong submissions. And so I'm pleased to be able to say that, you know, we didn't have one that made sense and one that's a flyer. They were both very good proposals. This one, ICOM, just wins on several factors. Does that help?
It does, yes, thank you. And one of those factors on which they won, might we assume that would include the downstream operating costs particular to the capital project? In other words, we have a very short letter from WSP projects indicating the relative ranking of, or the process of ranking the 2 proponents. And it is, of course, a high ticket item for the capital expenditure, but it will also become an ongoing operational cost. And I'm just wondering whether we have, and the community can have, certainty that ongoing operational costs have been factored into the selection.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely considered that. And remember that several municipal staff members, myself, Pete, Ange, a bunch of John and Gord on the ops team. So we all had our input as well into this scoring as well into the project. And so, yes, absolutely. The long-term operating was one of the factors that weighed into some of the questions we asked in the post-tender amendment to get clarity on whether or not we were making the right decision long-term. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And I have no more questions, but one comment, and just moving forward, you might consider this, but you mentioned strategic relevance, which is written in the report as organizational health. But as you presented the topic, it's clear that you understand and we all understand that really this is about community health. It's safety to move this plant, and it increases our service level long-term for our residents. And I am happy to see reports from administration that deal with all of the strategic priorities, including community health overall. I know that it's there, it's just not mentioned in the report, so something to consider next time. But thank you for all of that.
And thank you for that tip. Of course, I always want to improve my performance as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions for administration? Does the councillor have a motion? Councillor Wilson?
I'm gonna look over your shoulder there to look at the numbers, if I may. I would make a motion that council award the Jasper Arena ice plant replacement contract to ICOM Refrigeration in the amount of $2,484,353.93.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Is there any debate on that motion? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you for that. We can turn to agenda item 3.3, paid parking services request for decision from council. Mr. Gibbon.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. In front of you, you have a recommendation from administration that council award the RFP for mobile parking and payment technology services to Hotspot Parking Inc. for 5-year terms, April 31st, 2027. You'll see in the report the background action the council is well aware of, the 2021 pilot, and resulting council follow motions, which you were all involved in defining the parameters for the 2022 season. On February 2nd, administration issued a request for proposals that were aligned with those operating parameters established by council, and that RFP closed on February 15th. Following the close, administration, a number of members of senior administration evaluated the submissions and assembled the combined scorings that you see in the report. The submissions were evaluated on 4 different categories related to project experience, service plan and schedule, the budget that they proposed, and their references. And you'll see that there were 2 clear leaders in the submissions, Pay by Phone and Hotspot. and less than 1 point separated the two submissions when the scores were combined and averaged by the rankers. And so you'll see that administration is recommending hotspot. This is based on the fact that the cost and the solution that they proposed is equally capable of providing the service that the municipality needs, but without that less than 1 point difference. Administration is recognizing that we also have an established relationship with them from the 2021 pilot. And in terms of implementation and how smooth that process goes, that relationship has some value as well, because we know how they operate, they know how we operate. And that was not evaluated with the RFP. The RFP was essentially a greenfield sort of evaluation of the two different technologies, both equally capable. When it comes to making a recommendation on to council on who we should go with, administration saying those solutions are great, the price is acceptable in both cases, and on balance, given that they're so close, we recommend the council approve going with the provider that we worked with previously, so that we can enable that smoother startup and transition rather than having to relearn a bunch of things with a new service provider when we learned them already once last year. So, Your Worship, that's the recommendation. It is the RFP proposed a 5-year operating term with the option for the municipality's option to renew either for an additional 5-year term or for 5 one-year terms, subject to the municipality making that decision. And then, of course, throughout the course of the term, the municipality does have the ability to adjust the service delivery parameters that council may establish as needed. Your Worship, I'm happy to answer any questions on the recommendation, recognizing that we're getting a little bit long today.
Thank you, Mr. Given. I will take that as a hint. Questions from council? I do have one question, and it's just for public education more than anything. I appreciate your remarks about choosing one proponent to take advantage of an existing relationship, and that makes sense. But just for the record, can you confirm that initially the proponent here that is recommended was subject to a screening process, an RFP earlier, and the fact that they get an advantage from a relationship is in part because they won a previous meritorious selection process?
Yes, Your Worship. So they've actually gone through 2 now. So there was the first is the municipality selected a proponent for the pilot project. And so Hotspot was the highest evaluated in that among a number of industry players. And in this more ongoing RFP, they were again evaluated within the top 2 and only with less than 1%, with less than 1 point difference between the 2 of them. So they've actually gone through 2 competitive processes, both of which were requests for proposals, which explicitly provide the municipality with the ability to enter into negotiations or discussion with any or none of those proponents who made submissions. So this is different than a tender. A tender is the lowest price wins. This is a request for submission around services, where price is one of the considerations, but not the only consideration, and administration is acknowledging that there's that additional factor here after 2 competitive processes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In the absence of questions, I'm sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, I might be overlooking it, but what is their price?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Good, reasonable question, certainly. The submission from Hotspot is a percentage based, as it was with the last system, rather than a fixed fee. There is some measure of proprietariness to that, just recognizing that they may not offer every customer the same deal that we're getting. Certainly administration can share that with the council in an in-camera situation, because they as a provider may make different submissions in different communities. But it is within our budgeted amounts and is on a percentage basis of revenue.
just follow up then, so if it's percentage, what incentivizes them? I guess maybe increase payment, but we requested that more physical kiosks be added, which would be at their cost, wouldn't it?
Your worship, for Council Wilson, no, administration is actually recommending, so we did put in the RFP a option for the municipality. We wanted to see what the payment providers would recommend. All of them identified that their systems, which are really digital systems, can incorporate any. Some of them did offer recommendations or options on units that they could supply and secure and supply for us. The administration sees it as preferable for us as a municipality to purchase our own hardware that way, independent of any long-term contract. So we buy it outright ourselves, be in control of it ourselves, and then integrate it with the systems, which any of the systems that's submitted in the RFP can connect with essentially any hardware that would do that function. So we'll be doing that separately.
And final question is to do with credits. You know, as part of the RFP to suggest that they'd be able to incorporate that into their system.
Yes, your worship, any of the systems would be able to handle the credits as direct payments.
Councillor Ball?
Well, it seems like we're vibing on the same wave today. So Councillor Wilson addressed a lot of my questions. And in particular, I'm sorry, I didn't get through this entirely here. I'll talk a little closer to the microphone. With regards to the kiosks, are we taking on more than two? Is that what the recommendation is?
So again, to be just to be clear, administration is proposing the kiosks move independently. Council's budgeted for that. Administration will purchase those separately, just as a capital purchase. It is not contained in this recommendation. So this is really for a payments processing platform and provider of the system. We'll buy a machine separately as a municipality and connect it to the system.
So if I may continue through you, your worship, to administration, Mr. Given, did the either proponents of the top two, or maybe all of them, with our layout recommend more than two kiosks? No. I'm sorry if that's in here and I didn't get a chance.
No, your worship, for Councilor Devoted, we didn't ask them to comment on the number of kiosks that should be provided. We said, tell us how much it would cost for any kiosks we wish to purchase. We didn't ask for their consulting services on how many kiosks or location. We basically said, how much is the box? And they said, if you want to buy a box from us, here's how much the box would be.
Great, thank you. I've dismounted from that whole measure. I just wanted to see if there was any additional information there. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Your Worship. A question for administration. The 5-year term would commence as soon as possible. I would imagine April 1st potentially, which could then go until March 31st. Just that there would be a time for the company to be ready to go for May 1st when we are starting paid parking. So the 5-year term would potentially end on a different date. I also wanted to note that the 31st of April is actually not a date. So I guess we wanted to commence as soon as possible for 5 years, which could end potentially on April 30th.
Your worship, for Councilor Miller, thanks very much for that catch of that typo. Maybe that just means it's a contract in perpetuity since the date never actually arrives. But no, thank you for that catch. And to be clear, the engagement with Hotspot would be that they would be our provider on an ongoing basis throughout the course of the year. They would have even though we may not be requiring at this stage, we may not be requiring parking to be paid for the entirety of the year. They would still be a payment provider for that system or platform provider, because we may be signing up residents, providing credits or that other sort of stuff. It is fair to ask an administration is fully aware that we're getting towards some tight timelines to actually have things start up May 1st. We had a timeline chart of how we wanted this project to go. We are a bit behind with the issuance of the RFP, the evaluation, and convening it to council. So that's why we want to bring it here today, to give us the best chance of starting up for the first. But I think I won't be overly optimistic. I'll be cautious and sort of under promise over deliver. We're going to look to hit that May 1st timeline if possible. And it may not be possible, but we'll work with the providers since council gives us the decision to engage them.
Thank you for that. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion? Councillor Roger.
That council award the RFP for mobile parking payment technology services to Hotspot Parking Inc. for a 5-year term to April 30th, 2027.
Ready for the question? All those in favor? There are none opposed? There are none opposed, that is carried. Might I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Hall was the quickest. In the absence of objection, this special meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you to members of the public, both who attended in person and who attended with us on the Zoom platform. And our next meeting will be, I believe, April 11th. Is that the next? 12th? At 9:30 a.m. That's correct.
And Councillor Hall will be overseeing that meeting as I am in Calgary for the senior conference with Edward.
All right. Thank you all. Have a enjoyable rest of your day.